Good afternoon, everyone. It is 1:34 p.m. on February 15th, 2021 in Central Time in Chicago, Bear Down. Today, I feel like we finally have, it's over a week now since the end of the 2021 Super Bowl in which the Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And I feel like now, more than ever, we have a chance to finally cool off a bit and truly react. Because in the moment, it seemed like the Kansas City Chiefs were just a fish out of water, fish in a barrel, some fish metaphor, whatever fish metaphor you really want to use in this situation. It just seemed like they were so sincerely beaten by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that it was almost unbelievable. Because up to this point, they looked unbeatable. I feel like a lot of pundits, and myself included, sort of viewed this as one of two things can happen. It was a lot like when looking at it, it was, and apologies for really just jumping in like this, but I got a lot to talk about, so I'm just going to jump in. It looked a lot like, I don't know how many people watch the NBA, and more specifically watch Nuggets Jazz games, but it reminded me a lot of the Rudy Gobert Nikola Jokic matchup, where it's one of two things can happen. Either Rudy Gobert and the Jazz really put in a good effort and they just barely eke out a win, or Nikola Jokic puts up a 45-point triple-double and just demolishes them into existence. And I feel like that's what it was going to be for the Chiefs versus the Bucks. Either, the Bucks, they scratch and they claw, and, they play great defense. Guys like Vita Vea, Jason Pierre-Paul, they really just, they come out and they get a lot of rushing yards thanks to playoff Lenny. They're really great. Tom Brady doesn't make any mistakes, and they barely eke out a 21-20 or something like that win. Or the Kansas City Chiefs were going to drop 42 on them. Both of which were entirely possible. And I thought those were the two most likely options. If you ask me what would happen, I would say the Chiefs are either going to win by a lot or the Bucks are going to win by a little. Neither of those really happened, and it was kind of shocking. It was, especially for a lot of people in the media, because I feel like heading up to this Super Bowl, everyone was sort of saying oh, here's how Tom Brady can steal this Super Bowl. Here's how Tom Brady can eke out a win, and then he just crushed him. Well, not him. He played really, really good, but I feel like it was mostly the Bucks defense that did most of the work, because I feel like putting up it was 31-9 total, but I feel like the Chiefs easily could have scored more than 31. I feel like the Bucks offense performed the way they should have, given that the Chiefs defense wasn't, it was no world beater. It was about an average defense, and they had so many weapons on offense. I feel like 31 points is actually a little more than I expected them to score, but roughly in that range of I put them in around 24, 28 points, so that's not an obscene amount of points for them to score. But regardless, the fact that the Chiefs only scored 9, and that's incredibly weird, because if you look at the recent playoff and especially Super Bowl appearances by Tom Brady, he's beaten the Rams and the Chiefs. Rams scored 3, Chiefs scored 9. Incredibly low scoring games, very, very boring, almost unwatchable. But still, exciting nonetheless. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like the Super Bowl isn't exciting just because one team doesn't score a lot of points. But it was, the Chiefs had only lost 2 games in the season. Once to the Raiders, who had the best Raiders game in the history of Raiders games, and once to the Chargers when they were resting all their starters. And for 3 years now, it was Patrick Mahomes has been a starter for 3 years. He's been in the league 4 years, but he only played 1 game his rookie season behind Alex Smith. They looked unbeatable for those 3 years that he's been in the league. They've made 3 AFC Championship games, won 2 of them, and won a Super Bowl. In 3 years, to never not make an AFC Championship game is ridiculous. But Patrick finally looked mortal. He looked like just a really, really good quarterback. He didn't look like, what is he now, 24 years old? He didn't look like a 24-year-old GOAT. He just looked like a 24-year-old quarterback. And it was kind of interesting. I think a lot of that had to do with game planning. A lot of that had to do with just injuries on the offensive line. But we kind of got a game plan against them when they faced the Atlanta Falcons, who are a dismal team. And the Chiefs just had incredible struggles moving the ball down the field. If you watch Patrick Mahomes in that game, he played great, but it seemed like it reminded me a lot of like watching, again, I'm going to make like another NBA analogy. When you watch a guy like LeBron or a guy like Steph Curry or Kevin Durant, the really like the great players, whenever they're off the court and it's like the bench unit, you just kind of have to hold your breath. And I feel like that's what it was against the Atlanta Falcons. It kind of seemed like this whole time that this Chiefs team was like holding their breath, like, oh my gosh, I hope and I'm waiting and I'm expecting like this big, massive play to get this spark going, and then we just start scoring touchdowns and getting interceptions like nobody's business, and then that just sort of never came. And they looked mortal then, and I feel like they kind of floundered and they kind of collapsed, but they're just so damn good that they still made the Super Bowl. I don't know. This was a weird game. I sincerely did not think Tom Brady stood a chance at all. No chance. I thought like, oh my gosh, like maybe there's a reality in which he like scrapes by and wins. I would have put the betting line on like 0% chance that Tom Brady blows out this Bucks team, or this Chiefs team. He's on the Bucks, sorry. But you know, it just goes to show you what I know. Shout out to Vita Vea. Oh my God, massive human being. I think he was the best defensive player on the Bucks. I think he was the most impactful. I don't think he made like the most plays or the biggest plays, but I think he was easily the most impactful player on that side of the football for the Bucks. But now that we're removed from the Super Bowl, I'm getting off topic. Now that we're like finally removed from the Super Bowl, there's two things that stood out to me. The first thing was, let's calm down about Patrick Mahomes. Okay, he's 24 years old. He's been in the league for 4 years. He's been a starter for 3. He's made 3 AFC Championship games, a total regular season record of 28-8, a season with 50 touchdowns, made 2 Super Bowls. He has an MVP, a championship ring, and a Super Bowl MVP. He's 24. He's been in the league 3 years. He's made 2 Super Bowls. Okay, that's ridiculous. He's already got as many Super Bowl rings as Drew Brees. Okay, let's calm down. He's 24 years old, and he's doing this. Football's a team sport, all right? And he got drafted into a great scenario, but it's a team sport. Okay, there's 11 positions on offense, 11 positions on defense. This is not basketball. I am so tired of seeing these pundits on like ESPN and Fox Sports and NBC Sports or whatever the hell it is, MSNBC Sports or whatever it is, and seeing them like try to compare like, oh, what's Patrick Mahomes' or Tom Brady's NBA equivalent? That does not exist. There is no NBA equivalent to a player's career in the NFL. Now, sometimes you can like stretch it and be like, oh, what kind of trade is this, like the NFL versus the NBA? And I kind of do that too all the time, where I'm like, oh, okay, to put this into context, like it's like trading this player in the NBA, or it's like trading this player in the NFL, or this player in the MLB or whatever. But for the most part, you cannot compare the careers of quarterback to the careers of any player in the NBA, because they're one of 22 guys that matter. Really, yeah, you take into special teams and like secondary players, it's like they're one of 50 guys that matter. Whereas in the NBA, you really only need 9 guys. You really, like, if you have 8, you can make it work. You only need 9. You don't need 10 or 11 or 12 guys. You need 9 guys. I would rather have 9 really good guys, or I'd rather have 1 elite guy and 8 really good guys than 2 good guys and like 9 okay guys. You know, like, depth is so important in the NFL compared to the NBA, and it's a team sport. And the fact that in 3 years as a starter, he's already done all this. If he retires today, he's a Hall of Famer. I don't think 50 like, okay, Peyton Manning had 53, Tom Brady had 50, Patrick Mahomes had 50. That's it. He was, I want to say he was 22, 23 when he did that. Ridiculous. Peyton Manning did that in Denver when he was like 45 or some weird number like that. And Tom Brady was in the peak of his career. He's a Hall of Fame. Like, let's relax on the whole, like, oh my God, is Josh Allen better than Patrick Mahomes? Oh my gosh, guys, I would trade Russell Wilson Or I would trade Patrick Mahomes right now for Russell Wilson. I would. I don't even think he's better than Derek Carr. Like, let's relax. He's amazing. He's once in a generation talent. He signed a $500 million contract, and he's worth it. Like, let's calm down. Okay, his offensive line was bad. If you think he can't outscore a 31-point Buccaneers effort, you're wrong. Okay, he most certainly could, and he, quite frankly, it would be a little embarrassing. He could easily do something like that. But that being said, the Chiefs, the second thing I wanted to get to, the first thing was let's calm down on Patrick Mahomes' hot takes. Like, yes, he's still amazing. And the second thing is the Chiefs look beatable. You know, everything I just said about Patrick Mahomes is true, but they look beatable. They are no longer this immortal franchise of like, oh my God, we just have to ride this one out. Like, they have Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, Tyrann Mathieu, Patrick Mahomes, all in their primes with Andy Reid as the head coach. They're like, oh my God, who on earth is going to beat this team? They have multiple years of like winning 12, 14 games. They went, 12-4, 11-3, 14-1. Like, wait, yeah, that 14. Or sorry, that's only Patrick Mahomes playing. But when Patrick Mahomes is playing, they've gone 12-4, 11-3, 14-1. Like, that's ridiculous. That's an incredible. The 28-8 regular season record is incredibly good, and they did look almost immortal. But this should give a lot of teams a lot of hope, because the Bucs were the furthest thing from a world beater over from the NFC. They were good yards per attempt at 7. They had a really good offensive line. They had really good yards per attempt at 7.6. That was lower than the Titans. They were almost dead last in the league in rushing yards. They had a below average, in a good way, 7 yards per attempt from the opposing team. And they were top of the league in sacks at 48. So they had a very good defense, a good offensive line without a great rushing attack. They had a lot of weapons on the offensive end, but they didn't know how they would gel together, like Antonio Brown, Rob Gronkowski, like when they come out of retirement / when they come out of being like a professional nutcase. What are they going to look like? And they were certainly, throughout the season, an above-average team. They were certainly a very, very good team. By no stretch of the imagination, or in no way, shape, or form were they world beaters throughout the season. I mean, they lost to the goddamn Bears. You know, they were good. They were good. They were really good. They were not even projected to get out of the NFC, much less win the Super Bowl. They were projected to lose to the Packers. They were projected to lose to the Chiefs. They were, for the first time in his career, Tom Brady can legitimately say he was an underdog throughout the season. But this gives a lot of people a lot of hope, because the Bucs, you know, regardless, Brady won his 7th Super Bowl. He's the GOAT. I don't think that can be argued. But, and it might be a little hypocritical to say this, but I do think this gives a lot of teams hope for their future from the standpoint of, if the Bucs can beat the Chiefs, we can beat the Chiefs. Not to say that they're better than the Bucs, but the Bucs shellacked them. You don't have to shellac a team to win. You can win by 3, and hey, that's still a victory. If you're the Bills or the Ravens, hell, even the Browns, the Packers, maybe even the Cardinals, the Seahawks, the Rams, the 49ers, hell, the Bears, maybe, you know what, hell, even maybe the Vikings, the Packers, you know? You've all got hope. I know it's cliche to say this at this point because it's always said all the time, forever. But Brady is getting old. There's plenty of free agents on this team. A thing called the brain drain, where opposing teams sort of like pick off offensive, defensive quarterback coaches, you know, offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, quarterback coaches, just anyone from that organization, because it's a well-run organization and there's a lot of coaching talent on that team, where other teams look at that and they say, oh, I'm going to give this offensive coordinator more money, more power, more authority over players, and more stability, and sort of the ability to be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to challenge myself and become this coach instead of just a coordinator. And odds are they're going to take the job. So the Bucs are in a tricky spot, but I mean, obviously, you know, they won a Super Bowl. If they don't win another Super Bowl for the next 5 years to a decade, they've got this one. It's like this is a very good trade, especially in the NFL. Nothing lasts forever. So if you can get a Super Bowl now and like mortgage the next decade, that's still a win. But this does give a lot of teams a fair amount of hope. I think particularly the one that's most, at least for me, the one that's most interesting is Chicago Bears. Bear down. I think this gives them incentive to sort of see what they can do. Maybe test a bit. Maybe we saw it with Ryan Tannehill, and now we're even seeing it with Tom Brady, where sometimes new change of scenery, it can save a career. And if you're good and you go to a different place, you can still be good. I think, first and foremost, Derek Carr is off the table. I saw a rumor for that. There's no way in hell. Derek Carr is undoubtedly like a top 15, top 12 guy, without a doubt, and he's probably even like a top 10 guy. 27 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. I mean, if the Eagles can ask the Colts for a first-round pick for Carson Wentz, I don't even want to imagine what the Raiders can strong-arm the Bears into giving them. It would be quite frankly just ridiculous, because they will be so desperate for Derek Carr, and I think a lot of other teams would want him as well, that I think they could hypothetically like ask the Bears like everything. Khalil Mack, every pick you have, everything. We want Roquan Smith. You sign and trade Allen. Like, we want a share in ownership. Like, they could ask for any and everything for Derek Carr, because if the Eagles are like, we want a first-round pick for Carson Wentz, and Carson Wentz stunk last year, and Derek Carr had an exceptional year, QBR of 71 and a completion percentage of 67.3. He's certainly good enough to win with, possibly even good enough to win like a Super Bowl with. I don't even want to know what the Bears would get strong-armed into giving the Raiders. I think, there's obviously like a definitive set of guys better than Derek Carr. I think, obviously Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Josh Allen, guys like that, where they're definitely better than him. But there's no one who's like, oh, that guy, I guess he's better, but like, there's no one that throws you for a loop, like you're not sitting here thinking like, oh my gosh, is Derek Carr better than 37-year-old Ben Roethlisberger? I don't know. No, obviously he is. Like, this is obvious, But I think with Carr off the table, the Bears have to sort of get a little creative here in terms of who they go after, because you need someone who gives you the ability to win now, but flexibility in the future, because I don't think anyone who's up for grabs right now is a franchise guy, unless they take a big swing on Wentz and it pays off. I think you look at the Raiders' backup quarterback in Marcus Mariota. Now, granted, I've always been a little bit of a Marcus Mariota fan. Hell, even a defender, even when I shouldn't have been. I defended him even when probably wasn't worth defending over in Tennessee. He was always good, and that's it. He was always just meh, You look at him and you're like, wow, this guy has all the tools to be an incredible quarterback. And he was just always kind of, He was an above-average starter. He'd get you to the playoffs. He might even make you win a playoff game, but he was probably like in the tier of like an Andy Dalton, He was never as good as like Big Ben, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Matt Ryan, Matthew Stafford, Kirk Cousins. He was never, even Kirk Cousins isn't even in that tier. He's in a tier below it, but that's not like Marcus Mariota was a tier below that. He was good. He was always meh. But then in this year, we saw him in the one game he did play because Derek Carr got hurt. I think he was it's like a shoulder injury or hand injury. It was something. But in his one game of the season against the Chargers, he threw for 226 yards, a touchdown, an interception, ran for 88 yards, and a rushing touchdown with a QBR of 98.1. That was a really good game for Marcus Mariota. That was one of his better games, maybe not of his career, but certainly like of recent memory. And that's kind of what the Bears need. Trubisky was at his best when he was allowed to run and use his athleticism And Marcus Mariota, while he is injury prone in that he doesn't really know how to slide very well. He leaves the pocket a lot, he runs, and he isn't elusive like Lamar Jackson, and he isn't an absolute tank like prime Cam Newton. So he's kind of like in this weird middle ground of like, you could definitely catch him and you could definitely tackle him. So he's just fast, so you kind of have to hope that he gets out of bounds in time. Otherwise, once they touch him, like he's going down and he's going to get hurt. But 226 yards with 2 touchdowns and an interception on plus 88 yards rushing is nothing to scoff at. That's a really good game. And I feel like even if he's not a significant upgrade from Mitchell Trubisky, it's trying something new. It's bringing someone in who wasn't within this Bears organization and saying, hey, listen, we're going to take a swing on you. And this isn't Nick Foles, who had like one good year with the Eagles and was a consistent backup. This is a guy who's had a lot of starting quarterback experience. You're bringing him in. You're saying, hey, listen, man, it didn't really work out for you in Tennessee. Didn't really work out with you in the Raiders. You were just sort of there to like challenge and push Derek Carr into being better, and it kind of worked. And I just think if you bring a guy like that in, the worst case scenario is that he's just slightly worse than Mitchell Trubisky. Best case scenario is he's really good. It's certainly no world beater, but I think he could be really, really good. He's not getting paid a whole lot. There's 1 year left in his 2-year deal. I don't think you have to give up too much to get him. I don't think the market is like clamoring for Marcus Mariota. I think you can get him for just like maybe a second and a fourth. Not a lot, which actually that is quite a bit, but you don't have to pay a lot of money to get Marcus Mariota. They brought back Nathan Peterman and another backup quarterback at the Raiders, so clearly they're shopping him around. They're trying to get rid of him, in exchange for like some sort of draft capital, because they have to bolster things other than the quarterback. They have to bolster the secondary, the offensive line, the pass rush. They have to really bolster everything outside of quarterback. So they clearly want draft capital or something, like some sort of value in exchange for Marcus Mariota, because otherwise he's sitting on the bench to play one game. And they lost this game anyway, so it's not like he really even provided them that much. Well, they did. He did, but they lost. Clearly they need more than just a quarterback, a good backup quarterback. I'm sure they would rather have a better offensive line, another pass rusher, maybe another cornerback, or strong safety or something. But if they strike out on Sam Darnold, who I think could be an easy franchise guy for the Bears, Marcus Mariota is someone to definitely look at. Because he's on a 1-year deal. I think if you want to extend him, he would not cost that much. And, let's just say you do finally find a franchise guy in the draft or through a trade. You keep him. He's not going to cost you that much on the cap. And he's already proven to be a good quarterback or backup quarterback. He had that game against the Chargers, and then like after the game, he was like, "Yeah, this is still Derek's team. I'm just glad we could help us win." And I'm like, "Okay, well, first of all, concerning that you aren't like pumped up at all, but also that's kind of the status quo with Marcus Mariota. But also, that's kind of the mentality you want out of a borderline starter, but really good backup. He's probably one of the better backups in the league. He's probably like a good starter. I think Nick Foles, he's not like a huge upgrade from Nick Foles, but I feel like we've seen Nick Foles. I feel like if you want to do something to like give these guys like, former number 2 overall pick that isn't Mitchell Trubisky, you bring in Marcus Mariota. It might get some guys interested. If you can't get the franchise guy like a Sam Darnold, who knows? Maybe even like a Gardner Minshew is up for grabs. There's so many quarterbacks being drafted high up in the draft that Tua Tagovailoa, the Dolphins might even look to draft a quarterback. I doubt they're gonna do that. I'm pretty sure he's their guy. But there's such a high premium on quarterbacks in the draft. So many teams who drafted a guy really high in the draft that are still bad because they didn't really fix anything else with their team, and they're drafting high again for a quarterback. They're going to shop the quarterback they drafted pretty recently. You look at a guy like Gardner Minshew. They drafted him out of, I believe, Washington State. He was really good. They still stunk. Now they're going to get Trevor Lawrence. I don't know if they want Gardner Minshew on the roster. The Bears got options there. And I feel like there's a lot of good things they could do in that quarterback room other than just bring back the same old Mitchell Trubisky, Nick Foles duo. And, I feel like it would honestly pump a lot of life into the organization and give a lot of those guys on the defensive end, primarily Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks, some of the better defensive players, some hope that, like, hey, we're not wasting your prime. We're trying out here. And that's all I got for you today. Hopefully the Bears do something good. Hopefully we see Patrick Mahomes back to the Super Bowl again. Hopefully he plays better this time, so it's a little more exciting. Stay safe, everyone. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.